Welcome back to another episode of Mr. K Thinks About Stuff. I'm Mr. K. I'm about to think about some stuff. That probably was clear. Anyway, today, one of the things, so this came into my head. I was having a conversation with a student about just some stuff, basic stuff. Student walks into my room during one of my plan periods. They've got an off period. They want to talk about philosophy things. It happens on a semi-regular basis. And we were talking, and I'm trying desperately to remember what we even... we talked about the problem of the one and the many, which permeates all of Western philosophy. I am inclined to say it permeates all of Eastern philosophy, too. Less of an expert on Eastern philosophy. But we talked about a lot of things because it really is this constant thing that's going on. And he made a comment at one point where I said, well, one day, when we have this particular discussion in class, he said, I'll make sure not to raise my hand and just tell everyone the answer. And I said, in the moment, oh, yeah, don't do that. And I told him, I was like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, if anyone's had this conversation with me before, put your hands down. What does everyone who's new to this think about what's going on? And this got me thinking about a constant sort of debate I have either in my head or with other people about spoilers, about, talking about media, especially, and revealing the twist or the change in the plot or the ending or whatever it is. I think about this a lot, partly because I care a lot about media, but I also think about it a lot because I teach Latin and Greek and things like that, and so regularly the question of, we just performed Oedipus Tyrannos as our fall play, and that's been a thing for 20... I've returned since turning off my very noisy air conditioning unit. Anyway, so we performed Oedipus Tyrannos as our play. And that's been around for 2,500 years. So do you want your audience to know what's going to happen before they walk in, like everyone does? But not everyone does. So there's this, you have really two different audiences, those who know the ending and those who don't, who are still coming to see it. And this is all things that I was thinking about. So today I have before you some of my thoughts on spoilers and whether or not you should avoid them or give them or different things like that. I am known for saying things like, look, if it's not worth watching twice, it wasn't worth watching once in the first place, whenever someone accuses me of spoiling something. And despite that being a very flippant response, I do think there's some merit to the statement. I don't think it's a good argument for not spoiling things, and I don't pretend that it is such anymore. I think there's merit to it, and I'll get to that later if I remember to do it. But I thought maybe I should think more about, what's gained? What's gained by watching something for the first time? What really do you get from watching something for the first time that you cannot get from subsequent watchings or readings or listening or whatever it is? And so I thought through, and I think one of the obvious ones is pleasure, especially if it's, say, something like a mystery. It's just more fun to watch a mystery unfold when you don't know the ending. It's more fun to read a story if you don't know the ending. And one argument I've often brought up is, well, you do know the ending. You know that the good guys beat the bad guys in the end. Otherwise, it's not that good of a story. Or something like that. And while, again, I think that also brings up a good point. It's not a good argument here, because it's not about the fact that the good guys win. It's how they win. It's how that unfolds. It's the obstacles they have to overcome. It's the way they overcome them. It's how that can apply to my own life and all these different things. If that were a good argument against watching something the first time, it would also be a good argument against watching something a second time, because certainly now you even know how they do it all. So I don't think that argument's going to work here. But also, I'm not going to make the argument that you shouldn't watch things for pleasure, at least not in this video. But suppose it's something that's got more to it than just pleasure to offer, something like that. Something really meaty and worthwhile. What do you gain by watching it the first time, or reading it, or listening to it again? And one thing that I come back to is you get to watch it the first time. And without that being just completely circular, what I mean is you don't yet have preconceptions about what the meaning of something is. And Dominic de Guzman was really good at this kind of an idea. When he founded the Order of Preachers, he made sure that every single member of the Order of Preachers in whatever house they were in at the time, as long as you were a fully fledged member, you got to vote on all the things. Whether you were the oldest, whether the youngest, there wasn't a separation in that sense. And someone asked him, well, don't you think the older members would know better how to govern things? And he said, oh, they might. Like, fully, they might. But you'd be surprised what insights and gifts are given to the young. And I think that thinking that through, and thinking through about, if I'm going to go watch something, especially something classic, there's obviously intended meanings by the author, and there's analogies that are made and things like that. And, well, don't you think that the people who have studied this forever know what it's about already? And what are you going to gain that's new, that's different from all of that, from you watching it? And the answer is, I don't know. I do know that if you tell me what it's about before I encounter it, I'm less likely to think anything differently about it, because you've given me the interpretive model for it beforehand. And I don't want to disparage traditional interpretive models. There's a reason we keep them around. Your insight is not more important than everyone else's. So we can't just throw out traditional interpretive models. And in the same sense, yours isn't more important than everyone else's. If there's a real solid, everyone who's seen this or watched this or read this pretty much agrees, like, this is what's going on there, that's got a heck of a lot more weight than your little opinion does, than my little opinion does, or anything like that. That doesn't mean that you can't add something to the discussion, but it does mean you're not likely to overhaul it, and you probably shouldn't try to overhaul it if it's really stood the test of time and thousands of people have all said, yeah, that pretty much nails it. Another thing that's worth bringing up is the reason things are presented in media as opposed to a textbook or just a logical argument or something like that is beauty. There, you can really show something through beauty. You can really ignite someone's intellect and will to do the good through beauty. Dostoevsky does this masterfully, where he could have just written a bunch of essays against communism and against evil and against selfishness and greed, and against abstraction, against the idea that you can love something abstractly without loving the particulars within it. He could have written essays against this. He didn't. He wrote novels. He wrote really intellectual novels, but he wrote novels. He wrote stories with characters. And the reason that that's so much more effective is because it's beautiful. Not only does it point towards things that are true, and assuming that Dostoevsky's saying things that are true, I think he's generally on point. He's not perfect, because none of us are, but anyway. Not only does it point to something true, it points to it it shows us a harmonious way of that truth coming about, or that truth existing or being found. And it shows us it gives us a clarity. It strikes us. It wakens us up to see it. Or it helps us to finally stop lying to ourselves and pretending that something's not true, because we see, no, you're right. But it took someone saying it in that way to really get me to want it to be true, long after I already kind of knew it was true. And you can get this on the second time, you see this on the second time around, but you won't see it in the same way. Every time you read a novel, it's different. And the third reading is different from the second, and the eighth reading is different from the sixth, and all these different things. And so throughout your life, throughout the times that you interact with this media, you're brought on different journeys of coming to grasp things in your intellect, coming to understand true things in the intellect, and coming to desire good things with your will. You're brought on these different journeys, and so you gain a fuller, more harmonious, and wider breadth of understanding of the world. And the first time can be really important, because it's going to provide those preconceptions. It's going to provide a framework that your subsequent watchings, or even everything else you ever read later, is all going to be filtered a little bit through how you watched this piece of media, and how you watched that one, and how you watched that one, and how we kind of build everything all into one big web of meaning. And so that first time journeying through this process, this thought, this argument, whatever you want to call it, if it's not beautiful, that can be a real turn-off from continuing to pursue it. If it is beautiful, it can be a real way in to keeping that desire for truth, that desire for goodness alive, because you enjoy it, because it's pleasurable, and because it's beautiful. It speaks to us on a really deep level. And so I think there is real merit in letting the artist who created this piece of media masterfully have their chance to speak to people through that media the way they intended to speak through it, the way they've masterfully crafted it. Whereas my own summary probably isn't as good as the movie. Otherwise, people would read my summary instead of watching that movie, and that, I'm sure, is never happening. So those are, I think, some ideas about why there's merit to. I think it also works for go read it yourself. Someone's summary of something, or someone's understanding of something that they then relate to you, isn't ever going to be as good as really digging in yourself. I actually just had a conversation with someone where we were talking about a controversy that was going on in the 300s about stuff, and I said the things that I had heard and believed, and said, okay, well, it really looks like this one guy really fuels one side of the argument, and like everyone else is on the other side. And so I'm pretty convinced this is one that's correct and that one's not. And he said, well, this other guy agrees with that first guy. And in my head, I thought, yeah, probably because he knew him or came later and he's chatting with him and he gets his info from that guy. And partly, I don't know if that was my own assumptions or if someone had actually told me that or not, but I had never actually sat down and read this third person. Really, it's 500th person, but like whatever. And so I said, okay. And so my friend, I made this known. I was like, I've never really read him, so I don't know anything about him. And so my friend sent me a thing. And so I read through this little section of his work, and I was like, oh, he's not just saying, this other guy said a thing and I agree. He really gets into stuff. And to be entirely fair, I still think this side is currently has it. I think they currently still have the argument. But it's on much shakier ground. Maybe not shakier ground. I'm much more open to this side now. And part of that came from someone telling me, hey, you should go see this yourself. You should read through this thing yourself, because he basically agrees with this side. And if all I had done was heard, well, he basically agrees with this guy, and never went any further, I can tell you right now I would have dismissed it. Completely would have dismissed it. Because that's still only two guys versus several. Reading through it myself, really going and reading through what he's got, that opened things up, because I saw, no, he doesn't just agree with this guy. He brings in all kinds of stuff. And it's clear that this side has a lot more going on. So I think that not only is this a good sort of discussion of maybe don't spoil, especially good, really good things, really worthwhile things to read and see. But really also I think, go see it. Go read it. Go listen to it. Go watch it. Whatever it is. Because all of those things, the fresh look, the new thoughts, the new watching someone else work their way through it in a way that you've never worked through it before. All of that is so meaningful and so helpful, just to give you that one step closer to really understanding the way things are and how they really are. And wanting that. So that's what I got for spoilers. Hopefully. Now that I've got this new setup, I don't know that I love... Well, I know that I don't love this, but I don't know... Ooh, that's a whole sticker that's just still there. Anyway, I don't know that I love... I don't know. I'm working on it, but this, I think, is my new setup. I hope the audio is good. I am still working on audio stuff. I bought a microphone, did all these things, and the microphone quality was worse than just like recording on my phone from across the room. So not a smashing review for that microphone, but I'm working on it. Hopefully the quality continues to go up. Hopefully now that I've got a space dedicated to this for real, it's not just my classroom or it's not just whatever, a real space dedicated to this, I can sit down and make more videos.